Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. I want to talk about Professor Dungeon Master, and I want to talk about an incredible statement he just made on his channel. Truly, truly incredible. All right, so link below, because like I say things and people don't like, where's your receipts, right? So link below, you will find, I'm going to tell you what he said, and then you could check the link just to make sure that he said what I said he's saying, right? So Professor Dungeon Master on his Dungeon Craft channel said something astounding, which okay, I'm going to tell you what he said. Let's get into this. He said, role-playing games are communion. They are, he said, they are, dare I say, they are an emotional, dare I say, spiritual experience. All right, let me repeat that. He said, role-playing games are communion. They are an emotional, dare I say, spiritual experience, right? Now, I will tell you right now, I catch a lot of heat on this channel for talking about Dungeons and Dragons in a spiritual context, right? Now, I'm very careful to do this, but like, you know, when you speak publicly, people accuse you of 100 different things, right? And so basically one of the things, so I have a hierarchy in my life. This is the hierarchy. It goes like this. So, Christian husband, father, those three words capture virtually the entirety of my life, right? I'm a Christian first. I love God more than I love my wife, period. End of sentence, right? It's important, right? God is my first and foremost love of my life. I try to do what I can to be a good Christian. I fare horribly often. You guys are witnesses to that. I have terrible hubris, and I'm like a little bit of a I'm a fan of conflict, I think, like, you know, like especially, you know, virtual verbal conflict, you know, and so and I'm like an intense, adamant person, right? And I'm kind of drawn to virtual verbal conflict, right? And so I have to fight that, you know, that aspect of myself, right? But I'm an evangelical Christian, and so I'm a Christian husband and father, right? I'm a husband, you know, and I you know, many families are structured different ways, but I provide for my family. And you know, and I'm the primary provider, and that comes from my Christianity, and then I'm a father. I have 4 kids. Like, one of them still in the house. You know, amen. I'm kind of like I'm reverse counting the days. You know, I'm like a little bit wary of not having, you know, because like, my kids are amazing creatures, and like the world snaps them up and flings them to distant lands, right? And you know, and my kids are, you know, they connect to companies, and companies are like, hey, go do this in this place and crush it, and they do, right? And then I never get to see them again because they're just like wanted everywhere, and you know, and I'm just sad that, you know, my last child may be out of my home soon, and I'll be missing them deeply, right? So I'm a father, right? So spirituality is a massive part of my life, right? So for me, when we talk about canon, there's 2 canons, right? There's the canon of literally the Holy Bible, and I live my entire life by that canon, right? And then there's the 4th most important thing in my life. I am a Christian husband and father. Those are the pillars of my life, right? And then there's this 4th thing over there. It's almost like the dragon's tail. I am a dungeon master. And canon means more than just the Holy Scriptures, right? There is the Holy Scriptures. That is the greatest canon of my life. Nothing competes with it, right? But then there is the D&D canon, like, you know. And so when we say canon, C-A-N-O, when I say D&D canon hardback, right, like, canon means something to me in a different way, you know, like, and so, and also, I'm coming from this history of every word matters, right? Like baptism. I've sat under 100 sermons on the word baptism, and, you know, pastor after pastor after pastor saying, this word is so freighted that all the meaning and purpose of it will explode your brain, and it has to be eyedroppered in. to you, right? And so, and then I look at, Gary Gygax, and he was only human, right? But his legacy echoes, right? And his work is literally has a canon, a CANON, right? Saying, hey, hey, I see your little OGL nonsense, copy task over there, but I'm talking about a D&D canon book, right? And you cannot compare your OGL copy noise to a D&D canon hardback. It has a different meaning, right? For me, when you say an orange spine easily, that's part of the canon, the CANON, right? And so for me, like, spirituality is this huge part of my life, right? And everything that I do connects to spirituality, right? And so even the way I consume and process Gary Gygax's work, his canon, CANON, right? Like, if you're a godless person, what's canon mean to you? You don't even know what canon means, right? You don't know what it means to have a book of Philip, right? And what do we do there? I can't put that equal to the book of Matthew, right? These are God's words, and this is heresy, right? Like, and this is the issue, right? Like, when you come to a man like Gary Gygax, who was only human, right, but whose legacy is so powerful, it echoes with a canon, CANON, right? But I get all this flack, and people are like, oh, you worship Gygax. I don't worship Gygax. I've said again and again and again, Gary was a human, but his legacy has meaning, right? And canon has meaning. But increasingly, right, I say one thing 3 years in the past, and then the OSR comes and they validate it, I feel like, right? So I told you, I have an entire thing that says, do not take dungeon mastering. Like, you can go back and you'll find, a group of videos that I did on discipline, right? Bodies of knowledge that are connected to dungeon mastering, saying, do not approach the dungeon master seat lightly. You will never stop learning, right? You will be responsible for mastering multiple bodies of knowledge, right? And this is not asked of normal humans, right? And then Ben from Questing Beast comes and says, you know what? Here's what I have to say. I think the expectation of a 5th edition dungeon master is that the rules backwards and forwards. You're an epic storyteller and you're a life coach. That's what's expected of a 5. Saying flat out, do not approach the dungeon master seat lightly, right? If you can't bear weight, come over to the OSR, right? You see what I'm saying? I've been saying, hey, like, the word canon means something, right? Like, we evangelical Christians have a better understanding, and we can approach Dungeons and Dragons with more knowledge and more meaning, because we understand canon. We understand what's nonsense junk that should be thrown out, OGL, right? And and the book of Philip, right? And what cannot be lost, right? The book of Matthew, right? We understand canon, right? And so when we approach D&D, we approach it in a different way. And everybody's like, oh, Scott, you can't mix spirituality and tabletop role-playing games. I want you to look over at a brilliant genius. His name is Professor Dungeon Master. And he just said on his channel, role-playing games are communion. It is an emotional experience. Dare I say, a spiritual experience. I say it 3 years ago. The OSR comes and says it now, right? And I'm collecting my "I told you so" check, right? Professor Dungeon Master is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant man, right? And he's saying today, in my humble opinion, what I said 3 years ago. And he's right. He's right. When we come to a role-playing game, to me, the one that matters, Dungeons and Dragons. He said a role-playing game. I'm going to say Dungeons and Dragons, right? When we come to Dungeons and Dragons, we bring our mental, we bring our emotional, and we bring our spiritual energy. We have a mental capacity. We have an emotional capacity. And you could try to deny it. We have a spiritual capacity, right? And Professor Dungeon Master is saying, we have a spiritual capacity, right? Role-playing game is communion, right? We are communing. We are gathering together in fellowship, right? And he's saying it is an emotional experience, right? Dare I say, a spiritual experience. And he's right. Our spirit is involved. Our spirit is drawn in, right? Now, I want you to have a spiritual experience when you play tabletop role-playing games, right? But I want to encourage you to go farther, right? You are a spiritual being, okay? Enjoy Dungeons and Dragons. Know that every word that Professor Dungeon Master said is brilliant and correct. Role-playing game is communion. It is an emotional, dare I say, spiritual experience. That's what he said. Link below, right? But don't stop there. Get your spirit right. Get salvation. Tell Jesus Christ you know you are a sinner. You know when you stand before the judgment throne, you will be killed for your sin. And you need salvation, and you need to be saved, and you need to be drawn into redemption. When you stand before the judgment throne, if your record stands, you will die, and you will be separated forever from God, right? But if you say, God, I know I'm a sinner, and I need the salvation of your Son, Jesus Christ. I know he paid for it on the cross, and every drop of his blood was shed for me to make me saved and be able to see for my record to be replaced with Jesus' perfect record, right? That's the full spiritual arc, right? We could talk about Dragonlance theology. That's fun, but that shouldn't be where it ends, right? I'm here for all of it. I'm here to have a spiritual experience at the tabletop role-playing game, and I'm here to have a spiritual experience with my God forever, and I hope you're there with me. All that is what I have to share with you today. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.